Part 1-15 Forgotten Japanese Sleeper Cars 15-8 When people talk about Japanese performance legends, the same names always dominate the conversation. The Skyline GTR, the Supra, the RX-7, maybe the NSX if we're talking halo cars. But long before those icons took over posters, magazines, and late-night street racing fantasies, Japan was already building some truly fascinating sleeper machines. These were the cars that didn't look dangerous at first glance. They were small, lightweight, sometimes even cute, and often dismissed as ordinary commuters or modest coupes. But hidden beneath that harmless styling were rev-happy engines, clever engineering, and performance that caught a lot of people off guard. Today, we're counting down 15 forgotten Japanese sleeper cars that deserve far more recognition than they usually get. These machines may not have the global fame of a Supra or a Hakosuka GTR, but each one played a role in shaping Japan's performance legacy. And some of them were far quicker, more advanced, or more entertaining than their appearance suggested. 15. Toyota Sports 800 1965. We're starting with one of the smallest and most charming Japanese sports cars ever made, the Toyota Sports 800. At first glance, it looked more like a toy-sized economy coupe than a serious performance machine. It had a tiny body, round headlights, and a removable Targo-style roof that made it look fun rather than intimidating. But that harmless appearance is exactly what made it an early sleeper. Under the hood sat a tiny 790cc air-cooled flat-twin engine, producing around 45 horsepower. On paper, that doesn't sound exciting at all, but the secret weapon was weight, or rather, the lack of it. The Sports 800 weighed only around 1,280 pounds, which meant every bit of power went a long way. It could hit 0 to 60 in roughly 13.5 seconds. Which wasn't earth-shattering, but for a tiny mid-1960s Japanese coupe, it felt lively, responsive, and surprisingly entertaining. The simple interior kept the focus on driving, and the car's nimble handling made it feel far more alive than its engine size suggested. Most people overlooked it because of its modest specs, but drivers who actually got behind the wheel discovered one of Toyota's earliest truly fun sports cars. 14. Toyota Sprinter Trueno TE271972. Before the AE86 became a drifting icon and pop culture hero, there was the Toyota Sprinter Trueno TE27. To the average person, it looked like just another compact Toyota coupe from the early 1970s, but enthusiasts knew there was something special hiding underneath the TE27. Packed Toyota's 1.6-liter to TG twin-cam inline, making around 115 horsepower and sending it to the rear wheels. That might not sound huge today, but in a car weighing roughly 2,000 pounds, it was more than enough to make things interesting. Toyota's high-revving engine gave the little coupe a lively, eager personality, and 0 to 60 came in about 9.5 seconds. Strong performance for the era, especially from something that looked so innocent. Its simple styling helped it blend into everyday traffic, but on a twisty road, the TE27 could embarrass far more obvious performance cars. It was one of Toyota's earliest true performance sleepers, and it laid important groundwork for what would later become the AE86 legend. 13. Mazda RX-3, Savannah 1971. The Mazda RX-3, Savannah is one of those cars that people outside hardcore Japanese car circles often forget, which is a shame because it was one of Mazda's most important early performance cars. At first glance it looked like a small, tidy coupe with modest proportions and simple styling. Nothing about it screamed danger. But under that lightweight body was one of Mazda's greatest weapons, a rotary engine. The RX-3 used a 1.1-liter rotary making around 130 horsepower, which was an impressive figure for such a compact car in the early 1970s. Even better, the RX-3 weighed only around 2,100 pounds, so that power translated into real pace. It could hit 60 miles per hour in roughly 8.5 seconds, and because it was rotor-powered, it delivered that performance with a completely different personality than most piston engine rivals. It loved revs, felt eager, and gave the car a sharp, exciting edge. Many drivers underestimated it because of its size, but the RX-3 proved that lightweight engineering plus rotary power could create one of Japan's most respected early sleepers. 12. Honda S600 Coupe 1964. Long before Honda became famous for VTSE screamers and precision-engineered sports cars, it was already showing hints of that future with the Honda S600 Coupe. This little machine looked more like a cheerful city runabout than a serious performance car. It was tiny, rounded, lightweight, and almost cute. But beneath that friendly exterior was a car that revealed Honda's obsession with small engines that loved to rev. The S600 used a 606cc DOHC inline for making around 57 horsepower, which again sounds tinny until you remember the car weighed only about 1,575 pounds. Even more importantly, that engine could rev beyond 9,000 revolutions per minute, giving the S600 a thrilling character that few small cars of its era could match. It could reach 60 miles per hour in around 11.5 seconds, and while that won't scare modern performance cars, it was genuinely impressive for such a small displacement coupe in the mid-1960s. The S600 mattered because it established Honda's identity: lightweight cars, motorcycle-like engines, and driving excitement that felt much bigger than the numbers suggested. 11. Honda Life Touring -1972. The Honda Life Touring is probably one of the least intimidating cars on this list. Most people saw it as exactly what it appeared to be: a tiny city commuter built for efficiency, urban traffic, and practicality. And that's exactly why it was such a great sleeper. It used a 356cc air-cooled twin-cylinder engine producing about 36 horsepower. And yes, that sounds laughably small, but the Life Touring also weighed just around 1,400 pounds, which gave it a surprisingly lively feel for a Kai car of the early 1970s. It wasn't fast in the traditional sense. 0 to 60 took around 16 seconds, but that's not really the point. What made it special was the way it used its featherweight construction to feel playful, nimble, and eager around town. It wasn't a brute force sleeper like some of the larger cars coming later in this countdown. Instead, it was one of those forgotten little Hondas that reminded everyone that fun doesn't always require big power. 10. Mitsubishi Galant GTO MR1970. Now we step into something more serious. The Mitsubishi Galant GTO MR looked stylish, sporty, and a little aggressive, but it still never received the same respect as Japan's more famous performance machines. A lot of people saw it as a handsome coupe and left it at that. Enthusiasts, however, new Mitsubishi had created something far more capable. The GTO MR came with a 1.6-liter DOHC Saturn inline-4 producing around 125 horsepower. That power, combined with a curbed weight of roughly 2,150 pounds, gave the Mitsubishi real performance credentials. It could reach 60 miles per hour in around 9 seconds, and because the engine loved to rev, the car felt genuinely alive when pushed hard. The long hood, quad headlights, and fastback-inspired roofline gave it presence, but it still didn't look quite as threatening as its performance suggested. That's what made it such an effective sleeper. Mitsubishi focused on lightweight engineering and a high-revving powertrain rather than sheer engine size, and the result was one of the company's most overlooked performance cars of the era. 9. Mazda Cosmo Sport 11OS-1967. The Mazda Cosmo Sport 11OS may be one of the most beautiful cars on this list, and it's also one of the most important. When it first appeared, it looked like a futuristic concept car that somehow escaped onto public roads. Its low aerodynamic body, curved glass, and elegant proportions made it feel years ahead of its time. Because of that, people often focused on the styling first, but under the skin, the Cosmo was just as special mechanically. Mazda gave it a 982cc twin-rotor rotary engine, making around 110 horsepower, and in a car weighing about 2,050 pounds, that was enough for a 0 to 60 time of roughly 8.9 seconds. More importantly, it delivered its performance in a completely different way from traditional sports cars of the era. The rotary was smooth, eager, and high-revving, helping the Cosmo feel exotic in a way that few Japanese cars had before. The Cosmo wasn't just a pretty face, it helped prove that rotary power could compete with larger conventional engines and showed that Japan could build sports cars that were both advanced and genuinely exciting. 8. Subaru 360 Young SS 1968. If there's one car here that truly embodies the phrase, "Don't judge a book by its cover," it might be the Subaru 360 Young SS. This thing looked tiny, fragile, and harmless, more like a basic city runabout than a performance car, and yet, it was one of Japan's earliest and most lovable little sleepers. Power came from a 356cc, two-stroke twin-cylinder engine making around 36 horsepower, which was modest even by the standards of the day. But the Young SS weighed just 1,100 pounds. That featherweight construction made all the difference. It gave the car quick responses, playful handling, and a lively personality that made it far more entertaining than its numbers suggested. It wasn't built to dominate top speed runs. It was built to be nimble, energetic, and fun in the real world, especially on narrow roads where lightness mattered more than brute force. Most people dismissed it as basic transportation, but enthusiasts who understood what made a great lightweight car special knew the young SS was something more. Now we move into the upper half of the list, where the cars become more powerful, more sophisticated, and in some cases far more prestigious. But the sleeper formula stays the same: modest reputation, understated appearance, and performance that hit harder than most people expected. Seichi Isuzu, Sentu Dizasi Coupe, XE, 1968. The Isuzu 117 Coupe XE is one of the most elegant Japanese cars of the late 1960s. And that elegance is exactly why it often gets left out of performance conversations. It wore beautiful Italian-influenced styling, chrome details, and a low upscale profile that made it look like a stylish grand tourer rather than a serious driver's car. But beneath that refined appearance was one of the most advanced Japanese coupes of its era. It used a 1.6-liter DOHC inline-4 with around 120 horsepower, which was enough to push the lightweight coupe to 60 miles per hour in about 10 seconds. That doesn't sound outrageous today, but in the late 60s it made the 117 coupe genuinely quick for what looked like a classy design-focused car. At around 2,150 pounds, it stayed light enough to feel responsive, and the combination of smooth power, good balance, and sophisticated styling made it one of Japan's most underrated sleepers. People remembered it for its looks, but enthusiasts knew the real story was hiding under the hood. 6. Datsun Fairlady 2001 967. Long before the Z car made Nissan a household name among sports car fans, the Datsun Fairlady 2000 was already proving Japan could build a genuinely serious performance machine. At a glance it looked like a charming little roadster fun weekend car with classic British-inspired proportions, but it had far more pace than its elegant shape suggested. Under the hood sat a 2.0-liter U20 inline for making around 135 horsepower and paired with a 5-speed manual, which was a big deal in the late 1960s. With a weight figure around 2,050 pounds, the Fairlady 2000 could hit 60 miles per hour in roughly 8.5 seconds, making it one of Japan's quickest production cars of its time. It was light, balanced, and genuinely engaging to drive, with a driver-focused cabin and very few distractions. Outside Japan, it never got the same universal recognition as later Nissan icons, but anyone who drove one understood immediately why it earned such a strong reputation. This wasn't just a pretty roadster, it was a proper sports car. 5. Toyota 2000 T1967. The Toyota 2000 GT is a tricky one to call a sleeper because it was undeniably gorgeous, and even back then it looked expensive and special. But what makes it fit this list is that many people remember the 2000 GT primarily for its styling, rarity, and collector value while underestimating just how capable it actually was as a performance machine. The 2000 GT used a 2.0-liter inline-6, producing around 150 horsepower, sent through a 5-speed manual to the rear wheels, in a car weighing roughly 2,450 pounds. That was enough for 0 to 60 in around 8.4 seconds, along with handling refined enough to challenge European sports cars of the era. The long hood, pop-up headlights, low roofline and premium interior made it feel exotic, but it wasn't just posing. The 2000 GT helped prove that Japan could build a true world-class sports car, one that combined beauty, engineering, and performance in a package that demanded international respect. It may be famous today, but it's still underrated when people talk purely about performance sleepers of its era. 4. Isuzu Billet GT 1964. The Isuzu Billet GT is one of the most overlooked performance sedans and coupes to come out of 1960s Japan. It didn't have the visual drama of a halo sports car. It looked small, affordable, and almost anonymous, more like a compact daily driver than a machine meant to excite enthusiasts. But that's exactly what made it a proper sleeper. Power came from a 1.6-liter DOHC inline-4 with around 120 horsepower, and in a car weighing close to 2,000 pounds, that translated into real energy. The Billet GT could reach 60 miles per hour in around 9.8 seconds, and more importantly, it delivered that speed with sharp handling and a playful, lightweight feel. The cabin was straightforward and focused on driving, while the understated exterior let it disappear into traffic. Larger, flashier performance cars got the attention, but the Billet GT quietly built respect among enthusiasts who valued balance and agility over pure image. It remains one of Isuzu's most important performance cars, even if very few people remember it today. Trace. Toyota Celica MUI Centers GT TA22-1970. The Toyota Celica 160 TA22 looked stylish from day one. Its long hood, clean body lines, and fastback-inspired shape gave it a sporty attitude. But a lot of buyers still saw it as a fashionable compact coupe rather than a real performance car. That assumption is what made it such an effective sleeper. Toyota fitted it with the 1.6-liter to TG twin-cam inline-4, producing around 115 horsepower and paired with a 5-speed manual. Again, the real magic was the balance between power and weight. At around 2,100 pounds, the Celica felt nimble, eager, and surprisingly quick. With 0 to 60 in about 9.5 seconds. The engine loved to rev, the chassis was responsive, and the whole package had that classic Toyota formula of lightweight plus reliability plus just enough power to make it fun. Many people bought the Celica because it looked cool. Enthusiasts kept it because it drove far better than most people expected. 2. Nissan Cherry X1 R-1972. The Nissan Cherry X1R may be one of the purest sleeper cars on this entire list because almost nobody looked at it and thought performance. It was small, practical, fuel efficient, and styled like an ordinary little commuter, which of course is exactly why it was so sneaky. It used a 1.2-liter, a 12 inline-4 making around 80 horsepower. That doesn't sound like much, but the Cherry weighed only about 1,650 pounds, and that low mass gave it a lively, eager character. It could hit 60 miles per hour in around 10.5 seconds, but the real appeal was how much quicker and more playful it felt than the numbers implied. The X1R combined lightweight, simple engineering, and sharp responses into a package that was genuinely fun on tight roads. Most rivals chased excitement through larger engines. Nissan took a different route and created one of the most forgotten lightweight sleepers of the 1970s. 1. Mazda Loose Rotary R130-1969 at number 1. We've got a car that perfectly sums up what makes a great sleeper: elegant styling, a premium image, and performance that most people never saw coming. The Mazda Loose Rotary R130 looked like a refined luxury coupe, not a car built to surprise drivers at stoplights or on winding roads. Its long hood, graceful proportions, and Italian-designed bodywork gave it a sophisticated, almost European character, but underneath that polished exterior was one of the most advanced powertrains Japan had to offer. Mazda fitted the Loose R130 with a 1.3-liter twin-rotor rotary engine producing around 126 horsepower and 127 pounds-ft of torque. In a coupe weighing roughly 2,650 pounds, that was enough for 0 to 60 in about 9.5 seconds. Solid performance for a luxurious late 1960s Grand Tourer. More importantly, the Rotary gave the Loose a smooth, rev-happy personality that set it apart from conventional rivals. Inside, it leaned into comfort with premium materials, spacious seating, and a more upscale atmosphere than most Japanese cars of the time. But that's exactly what made it such a brilliant sleeper. Buyers saw elegance and refinement. Enthusiasts discovered rotary power, surprising pace, and one of Mazda's most overlooked engineering achievements. And that's what makes this entire list so fascinating. These cars may not have the global fame of a Skyline GT, an RX-7, or a Supra, but each one helped build Japan's performance reputation in its own way. Some did it with rotary engines, some did it with tiny high-revving fours, some relied on featherweight construction, and others hid real speed behind luxury styling. But all of them proved the same thing. A great performance car doesn't always need a wild body kit, a huge engine, or a giant reputation. Sometimes the best machines are the ones nobody sees coming.